this session so that you'll have an opportunity to view it later on our YouTube channel. But again, thank you so much. My name is Michael White. I'm a principal with Consulting for CRM, and we have a very innovative Microsoft CRM product called Professional CRM. We're definitely changing the success rates for law firms and other professional service firms. We have an ongoing commitment to what we call education through experience, and very, very fortunate to have Julie Savarino presenting today. She's the Managing Director of Business Development, Inc. Julie's an attorney, renowned expert in client service and business development for law firms and other professional service entities. Been in this business for a very long time, was the original creator of the Marketing Partner Forum, and not an average consultant. Julie gets things done. She works as a trainer, coach, advisor, consultant, strategist. You can read her bio. It's exceptional. We have a very timely and interesting webinar today, how to turn the collection season into a new business development opportunity. In former life, I was chief financial officer at law firms and understand what's going on in your firms today. So very timely, and without further ado, one little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions during the session, just pose the question and I'll moderate that. And if it makes sense, I'll ask the questions midway through. We're going to leave time at the end. So without further ado, please welcome Julie Savarino. It's all yours, Julie.
Thank you so much, Michael, and I really appreciate being here. I want to welcome all of you to this webinar. It's entitled How to Turn Collection Season into a New Business Development Opportunity. My name is Julie Savarino. Michael said I'm a lawyer, and I serve as Managing Director at Business Development Incorporated, where for 25 years I've helped law firms, lawyers, marketing directors generate measurable new revenue. I'm best at the client development and sales process and help firms efficiently and effectively increase revenue and profitability efficiently. Michael mentioned it, and if you're interested in more of my background, please visit my website, and my biographical sketch appears there. I want to thank you all, though, for having me. Today, I have 3 objectives for this webinar, and those are to provide you with specific information and tools that will, 1, help position you as a trusted advisor to your clients. Secondly, to deepen and broaden your client relationships while collecting outstanding receivables. And third, to increase your chance of ending your collection visits, meetings, and conversations with new legal work, or the opportunity for new legal work soon. There are 4 key steps to making the collection season a new business development opportunity, and I'm going to cover those today. Essentially, in order to make a standard collection call or visit into new business, you need to consider upgrading 4 things. First, you need to consider upgrading your mindset as a lawyer. Secondly, you need to consider upgrading the way you prepare for your collection meetings and calls. Third, you want to think about upgrading your approach and actions to your collection calls and meetings. And finally, and very importantly, upgrade your follow-up. I'm going to go through that in detail here throughout this webinar. So first, I want to talk about what are some of the upgrades you may want to consider in your mindset if you're a lawyer who needs to collect. Well, the first icon here is an image that encapsulates the mindset and attitude of approximately 80% of lawyers when it comes to collections. It's sissy, spade check, screaming bloody murder, right? The bottom line is that the majority of lawyers resent having to collect. They dread doing it. They hate raising the issue of money owed and having to get paid. Also, many lawyers see it as a time suck in their very busy schedules. All of this is very true, and up to 80% of lawyers have this dread mindset. Now, interestingly, though, and very importantly, 20% of the lawyers in the country and the world have a very different mindset that's represented by this icon. They actually see collection season and collection meetings as a very great opportunity to develop new revenue. Only 20% of lawyers think this way, but their mindset is that they embrace collection season as an opportunity. Why? Well, any good lawyer is very busy, and they very rarely have a chance to have meaningful conversations and face time beyond the matter at hand with any one client. Rarely are they with the client physically in their office. This is the opposite of public accountants, because unlike accountants, lawyers aren't able to be on site at the client's offices as is required by law by independent auditors. So 20% of lawyers out there have a different mindset towards collections. They see collections as an opportunity to catch up with the client, to learn about what's going on, what's developing, to deepen the relationship, and to position themselves as a trusted advisor. So those of us that are in the 80% of lawyers that see collections as a dreaded process, we need to start thinking about changing our mindset and thinking outside of the box. We actually need to turn our thinking on its head and start thinking about collection season as an opportunity to catch up with clients, have a conversation beyond the collection issues or the immediate matter at hand, learn about what might be happening in order to deepen, broaden the relationship, and walk away with new business. So once you've upgraded your mindset, and I'm going to assume those of you who are lawyers on the call listening want to consider upgrading their mindset and embracing collection season as an opportunity to develop business, the next step you need to consider is to upgrade your preparation. And what you need to do there, excuse me, I apologize, but I'm not used to this system. What you need to do to upgrade your preparation are basically 8 things. You need to identify and list resources. You want to make a list. You should prioritize your list. You want to schedule your time and effort based on your priorities. Gather, review, and analyze key information. Prepare alternatives to the old school paying by check. You want to upgrade your objectives and approach to your collection meetings and conversations. And then you want to prepare your follow-up ahead of time. These are 8 steps, and I'm going to review them today. First, you want to think about your resources. Almost every lawyer has at least one secretary or assistant or paralegal. Many of them are very qualified and also willing to help. But in most law firms, you have help way beyond just your assistant and secretary. You usually have a chief financial officer, you have billing assistants, accounting assistants, billing records. Many firms have collection staff, and many firms also have marketing directors or marketing staff that could be of assistance. The key to do as a lawyer, the first thing you want to do before you even start in your collection season is to get your team together. Ask yourself, who can help me leverage my time? I'm going to upgrade my process. I'm going to upgrade my mindset. I need to upgrade my preparation, and it's very important for me to do that preparation as efficiently and effectively as possible. And usually within your firm, there are resources there to help. Once you've established your team that will help you, you want to have them work with you to create a list. What you're looking at here is a list. It's called an AR, accounts receivable list, very common that almost all lawyers have this and see this at all times. Essentially, you're looking at the columns that describe who the client is, the name of the key contact at that client, who the billing contact is at that client, how much that client owes, the date that a request for payment was last made, and the age of the receivable. Now, what you want to do is you want to consider your priorities and the appropriate action and the date at which you're going to implement that action for each of your clients that owe you money. So in this example, you can see that BRT owes over $1 million. Acme Limited owes over $700,000. So I would personally prioritize them as one. Now, in terms of action, you only have 3 choices in terms of communicating to collect money. And those choices are to communicate verbally, by phone, to communicate in writing, and that could be by email, finally in person. Now, with your highest priorities, studies show that your chances of getting money and also generating new business for your top priorities, the preferred by far action is an in-person meeting. So for all of your highest priorities, those who owe you the most money and those whom you perceive have the best opportunity for additional new business, you want to definitely schedule an in-person meeting or go visit their office. Now, almost all collection activities require a combination, so you're never going to be able to just meet with them usually. Rarely do you just meet and get paid. You probably have to follow up in writing. And that's why preparing ahead of time in terms of a prioritized list is so important. Now, once you've created your prioritized list, you need to gather and review key information. Almost every lawyer already receives the outstanding invoices to date, but if you haven't received them in detail, you want to make sure you have each outstanding invoice with the detail ready to take to your meetings. The reason is clients often will ask about it. You also want to have the total due. The second thing many lawyers already do to prepare for collection meetings, but you want to make sure you circle back on, is to know the status of the last collection effort. Importantly, who from our firm contacted whom at the client. This is critical because collections are just part and parcel of a business, and these need to be done professionally without overlapping communication and redundant communication. In other words, we don't want 12 different lawyers calling 6 different people at the client continually requesting payment. Instead, we'd like to have that coordinated. Now, the majority of lawyers, 80% of lawyers, actually, this is where they'll prepare and stop preparing in terms of information they've gathered to do their collection calls. But you're going to want to think about adding another dimension of information gathering in order to generate new business from your collection calls. That is, you want to ask a researcher, your marketing director, your librarian, your paralegal to gather some client intelligence. And examples of what you want to ask them to gather for you are as follows. Ask for all recent news about the company. You also want to know any key developments about key decision makers and key people. If you have a great CRM system internally, like professional CRM that Michael's company offers, or a similar CRM system, you also want to run everything there and find out who's subscribed to which blogs, et cetera, what they've attended, et cetera, that our firm has produced or offered. You also want to ask to find all new cases that have been filed since you last communicated with this client. Now, that's new cases both in court, whether it be local, state, federal court, and or appropriate administrative bodies, locally, municipally, or statewide, that are relevant. You want to ask for a case and matter history from that client, which is a great way to identify trends in terms of repetitive claims and issues that could be avoided in the future. If the company is public, pull and read their latest quarterly report. And if you're a lawyer who is representing a public company who owes you money and you have not done so this year, pull the company's current year's annual report and read that, especially the letter to shareholders, because that is usually what describes the company's growth plans, growth objectives, merger plans, etc. The goal with this information is to review and analyze it to identify possible legal, oh my goodness, I'm messing this so bad, identify possible legal needs and issues. This is where the money lies. The key is the information must be gathered, it should be reviewed, the attorney must analyze it. Now, once you've done that step, you want to also be prepared ahead of time to bring in writing options of ways the client can pay other than the old school check. Almost all law firms have the ability these days to have e-bill, to be paid right off their e-billing system. Almost every firm has the ability for clients to pay in a secured way off their website. Every law firm has the ability, as long as they have a bank account, which is mandated, to facilitate wire transfers and accept those. Also, most firms have ACH or automated clearinghouse payment options. Interestingly, some of the forward-thinking firms out there in the country are dedicating a few mobile devices that are pre-programmed with either PayPal or SquareUp, and then they're letting the lawyers know those are available and then asking the lawyers to sort of sign them out when they're going on their collection calls. And this has been very effective in getting payment in the door pretty rapidly. So bring a summary of what your options are to your collection meetings and calls and have it in writing that you could email it or bring it in hard copy so that there are options for the client to pay you right then and there. Now, once you have prepared your alternatives to checks and have those ready to go, you want to consider upgrading your objectives and approach to your collection calls and meetings. The most common objective for almost all collection calls and visits is as follows: to get paid on the spot or to receive a commitment to get paid on a date in the near future. 80% of lawyers, when they go on collections, have this, actually, I'm sorry, 100% of lawyers have this objective when they go on a collection call. However, if you want to either get new business from walking out the door from that collection meeting or when you hang up from a collection call, you need to consider upgrading your objectives. To walk away with new business, there are 4 additional objectives I'm going to suggest you consider as part and parcel of every meeting and call. Here are the examples. Maybe your first objective would be to extend holiday greetings, since it is early November and now we are entering into the holiday season. A second objective should be to catch up with the client and especially to have a meaningful conversation over and above the outstanding receivables at hand. A third objective would be to add value as appropriate. You need to bring and add value. 3 examples are: almost every firm sponsors seminars, events, and programs, and usually many are already on the books for coming months and for 2015. You can bring a summary in writing of what those are, give it to the client, and ask them to pick ones they might be interested in. Another example are the multitude of firm and practice group sponsored email alerts, blogs, etc. There's opt-in options, and if you bring, both in terms of a follow-up or in writing, a piece of paper where the client can review all the ones produced by your firm and opt in, that's a great added value. Another example of added value is to bring a list of available continuing legal education or continuing education programs that your firm does and could offer to the client as appropriate in the coming year. The fourth and important objective you want to consider upgrading, and the most important by far to generating new business as a result of your collection calls, is to identify new, developing, projected, and or latent needs and issues during your call or meeting. The only way to do this is to gather, review, analyze, and study the client intelligence and then create discussion points, talking points, and questions to ask as appropriate during that meeting. If you do not do that, you will probably not generate new business from that call. And then, of course, the final objective for any, or actually the number one, but I'm reordering them, objective for any collection call or meeting is to get paid on the spot or get a commitment to be paid in the near future. So those are some of the upgrades you want to think about. Once you've upgraded sort of your preparation, you want to think about your communications approach and your own personal style and mindset as going into these meetings. The best approach is to have a commitment to this process and to embrace it, and also to the preparation phase, and to do that in an upgraded manner over and above sort of the basics that we sort of mentioned prior. You need to approach each of these meetings with interest in the client and sincere interest in the client. You don't want to just ask these questions as if you don't care, because interest and concern are what establish trust. So you definitely want to have interest and sincerity going in as in part of your mindset. Of course, all collection calls and meetings should be held very professionally, and that includes being courteous, civil, and respectful towards everyone, not getting defensive during any portion of the discussion. Most importantly is to have a follow-up routine and discipline already established in your preparation phase so that you can make sure that you, number one, collect the money that's owed, and then number two, also follow up in terms of the next steps of business that might be needed. This is a great place for in-house marketing staff, as appropriate, to help. They can not only help with the follow-up, but they could also do some of the follow-up calls for the lawyers if they're properly trained. Okay, so I've talked through some of the key things you need to do in terms of upgrading your approach, practice, preparation for collection meetings in order to convert them into business. Now, I want to talk about specifically how you would upgrade the actual collection conversation. First, you want to think about, am I just going to show up, or am I going to request them to ask, am I going to request to have a meeting? You can just show up, and it often is very appropriate as long as you do that at a time that's relatively generally convenient for the client, such as first thing in the morning or right before or after lunch. The key about these collection meetings is not to charge for them. It's very important that you ask and let the client know that this is on my dime. You may want to consider including this meeting in your next invoice as a no charge NC. You don't mark it as a collection meeting. Instead, you say, call it a complimentary annual review, complimentary client review, and then put no charge and the amount of time, because it should take you pretty considerable time if you're going to do these well. When you go to the meeting, you want to set the tone by bringing something either tangible or intangible. I mentioned some of the sort of intangible things, being offers for programs and seminars the following year, being offers to subscribe to blogs or email alerts, being maybe continuing education or continuing legal education programs. I'm going to mention some of the tangible things you can do and bring in a minute. You want to come prepared to raise an issue, a new regulation, and or a legal development of which they may not be aware. For example, if your firm does intellectual property work, the America Invents Act, AIA, has now caused a new venue to sort of litigate patent issues, and that's inter-party reviews. If the client who you're going to visit who owes you money has intellectual property and does have patents, you may want to be prepared to raise the issue. Bring it up and say, how are you handling these? Do you see them as a way to possibly work with some of the disputes over patent rights that you've been experiencing, etc.? Another thing you want to do in these conversations, when you get there, is start with the personal. How are the kids? What are your plans for the holidays, etc.? Again, just because I'm assuming being November 12th today between now and the end of the year are when most of these meetings are going to happen. After you transition from personal and you get into business, ask good questions about number 3. In other words, be prepared on some of these developments to be able to mention them. And you may, in fact, be able to tie some of the developing issues with what you've gleaned from the intelligence. If the intelligence that you've gathered and analyzed shows a trend or case or issue, ask about it. Say, I saw that you just 2 weeks ago filed in X court for Y matters. Do you already have outside counsel helping with that? If not, we would love to help. If they already have outside counsel helping, ask. Say, just to let you know, we also do that very well. If you have maybe a next case that comes up that's similar, would you consider using us? So find out what is going on and ask questions about it. Next, if from the intelligence that you've gathered and analyzed, it is not clear what's on the agenda for growth for 2015, ask. All you need to ask is, what's on the agenda for 2015? What are the company's growth plans? With mid-tier companies, which is a lot of clients of many law firms, the only way to get this information is by asking that question. Now, obviously, finally, at the end of these meetings, you want to bring up the issue of the outstanding invoices. Be prepared with hard copies and hand them to the client. Be prepared to discuss and just flat out say, could I please get paid for these outstanding invoices? I have, a way that you could pay me right now. You want to be prepared for resistance. For example, the client may say the check is in the mail. You want to be able to say, well, would you mind letting me know the check number and the date it was mailed? Or the client may say, oh, we have a really bad cash flow problem right now. We're not able to pay. Then you want to be ready by saying, well, could we consider setting you up on a payment plan, etc. Now, I mentioned bringing something tangible. This is a best practice. You set the tone of the meeting by bringing something they will like and appreciate. If you're meeting with just one client, maybe bring a coffee and a bagel for that client if you're swinging by at breakfast. If you know the client has staff, bring and a team over there, bring a tray of donuts. Obviously, if they're gluten-free, that's a problem. If they're gluten-free, bring a tray of fruit. But towards the holidays, the best thing to do is to bring something festive. And I mention this because it's really a best practice, and I'm going to tell you the example here just in 1 minute. The examples that I brought here are 3 where the lawyer actually plans to bring something that supports a community, charity, or pro bono effort that's near and dear to either the client's heart or the lawyer's heart. There's 3 examples here. One attorney buys the holiday bread from his church and then delivers that to clients as part and parcel of his year-end review/collection meetings. Another client buys and purchases something, and this happens more than once, made locally. In this example, it's some chocolates made locally. A third example is a lawyer that buys candies from the Kiwanis Club that all the proceeds go to supporting the charities in that regional area. The point is, this is a very effective way to bring something that clients value and also gives back. Some of the best rainmakers I know do this as a routine. They plan for, in the 4th quarter and in the 1st quarter, to bring something and take it to the client using the method and the sort of talking points I mentioned prior to greet the client for the holiday season, use it as an opportunity to catch up, use it as an opportunity to talk about what's been going on, what they expect to be happening in the future, etc., to assess needs with the hope that that will develop business in the future. And trust me, it does develop business. The majority of lawyers who do this as a routine use this upgraded collection season as a way to have annual reviews and identify needs, come away with a lot of new business. Now, the most important thing if you're going to do this is to have your follow-up prepared ahead of time. So again, in the beginning, when you're enlisting your team and your resources, maybe your marketing director in your firm can help you, or your assistant, to prepare ahead of time for your follow-up. plan to convert conversations to writing. Not only does it double your chances of getting new business, but it's also going to triple your chances of actually getting paid. So you want to have follow-up templates prepared in writing ahead of time. There's usually multitudes of templates already in existence in law firms that ask for the attached invoice to please be paid. You might want to send that separate from the conversational follow-up email. So for example, if I'm doing these upgraded client reviews, there's kind of two baskets of takeaways and follow-up. One is the issue of paying the invoice if they didn't pay on site, and the second is the issue of the next steps associated with any needs that were identified. So I may want to send those in two separate batches. The reason why is for the invoices themselves, 9 times out of 10, the client needs to forward it to somebody to get paid. There's a payment process. So you may want to just send that in a short and sweet email saying, as we discussed, attached are the 17 invoices that are due and payable. You mentioned you facilitate getting a check cut by the end of the week. Please feel free to forward this as you see fit. Then the second email may be a summary of the conversation about needs. So it could say things like, John, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciated learning about the fact that you do think there is a role for inter-party reviews for your patent portfolio. As we discussed, as the first of the year turns, I'll be back in touch to maybe introduce you to my partner, blah, 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 whatever might be appropriate. The key with follow-up, though, is to schedule auto reminders in your Outlook immediately until you've, do it right away before you even send the follow-up in writing to make sure you get paid and that you follow up by introducing that client to your partner or whatever might be appropriate. So with that said, what I tried to cover today were very specific practical suggestions and tips on how you can walk away from collection meetings and visits with new business. And what that takes is an upgraded approach in terms of your mindset, in terms of your preparation, in terms of your approach, actions, and follow-up. Now, I'm not trying to promote, but I need you to know that I have many other resources available on our website. One is our award-winning Rainmaker Coach app. We also have a brand new series of 20-minute Rainmaking Express videos. We also have a lot of webinars on demand and a lot of best practices checklists. So if you're interested in any of that, please just visit our website. With that, I would like to thank you all very much for attending. I know, Michael, I think you have some, you wanted to do some Q&A, but I'm hoping you all found this webinar helpful and useful in terms of how to turn collection season into a new business development opportunity.
Yeah, it was fantastic, Julie. Thank you so much. So I think, in looking at the attendees, what role can marketing play in this whole process, other than kind of being the gopher for research?
Well, that's a good question, Michael. So marketing directors can play a role. It really depends on who they are, how much time they have, their interests, and really what their job description is. But in my professional opinion, all of us in the marketing or business development role, our job is to generate revenue, drive revenue. So getting involved in this area is really a good way to just add value and prove your worth at your firm. So specifically, Michael, I think I have 5 options maybe that marketing and business development people can consider in terms of supporting, helping, guiding, and coaching their lawyers in this collection process and every year in collection season in order to convert it from simple collections to potential new business. First, they can just offer to help. Maybe individually, or you could send a firm-wide email summarizing all the collection resources available in the firm and letting lawyers know that. You could also let them know you're willing to help. You could create these added value checklists with a list of all the seminars, events, and programs scheduled between now and the end of 2015. You could also provide them all with the opt-in sheet for your blogs and email alerts. You could also do a summary for them of all the continuing legal education program options the firms have, even if it's not. So in other words, maybe we have an estate planning module for executives. Maybe we have a covenants not to compete program. Maybe we have a real estate, development type CLE. Maybe we have a continuing education program for engineers. That list would be helpful to be able to send it to the lawyers so they'd have that to help fuel their conversation. I think the key, being the gopher bee to get the intelligence, isn't the way I see it, Michael. I think the best thing that business developers and marketers can do is oversee, help gather, and analyze the client intelligence. One of my biggest things is the ability to brief the intelligence, because if we just simply ask for all the different resources, it ends up being about 3 inches thick of paper, and the lawyers don't have time to review that. So it's really high added value for the business developers and the lawyers to brief it for them. Basically create a one-pager with questions they can ask and discussion points. And that would be a very good way to help coach and guide the lawyers on what they can talk about. In a related point, they could compile all the new laws and regulations that affect their clients, all the major ones anyway. And then I guess, Michael, my last suggestion for marketing people is, our job is to help our lawyers get money in the door, and 98% of it has to do with follow-up. It just is hard for them given the demands of the billable hour. So I personally would offer to follow up in any way I could to help them. I would ask if they wanted me to once they're done with the meetings, I could auto-populate their Outlook if you're on group Outlook. I could also help do your follow-up calls for you. You want to get some training on that, but I'm more than happy to help. So I think there's a lot of areas where the marketing and business development directors and staff can play a role. It just does depend on the firm and their time and their bandwidth and whether they have time. Is that helpful?
Yeah, very helpful. And just from listening to you and throughout the entire presentation, it's, again, being a former CFO, controller in large law, it's really, I think it comes down to behavior modification and your tips on, turning those collection calls into business development opportunity. It doesn't necessarily just have to happen in November and December. Maybe you're modifying that behavior so that they're meeting, 3 times a year, and if there is a collection issue at that point in time, you can talk about that as well as a topic. So that.
Well, actually, that's one of the biggest things, and I forgot to mention it. This technique is most effective with old AR, and that's one of the banes of most law firms right now. They have this huge amount of over 180 days old receivables, and there's a big reluctance to collect. So actually that is another area where sophisticated marketing directors could go talk to their chief financial controllers, find out exactly how bad that is, and come up with a strategy to collect it.
Well, Julie, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Attendees, thank you so much for participating and hanging in there. We've gone a little bit over, but, a lot over, but I think there was some great stuff in there. Julie, we've had several requests for the slides, so if you can send those to me, we'll distribute them. Julie Savarino, thank you so much for imparting your wisdom in this webinar series, and we appreciate your participation very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everyone.